So welcome back to part 2 of this series of me showing you how I make the traditional Hmong purple hat. And here you see me making nips into the foam, and they basically serve as a guide so that I know how wide to make this band of foam to create the structure of the hat. And it's 4 inches width. And you can see me there manipulating the foam. Sometimes the nip in the foam will disappear, so I just bend it a little bit to help show where the nip is, and it'll help me guide my cutting of the foam. And this one band that I'm cutting is actually more than enough for a newborn hat, and I actually based this cutting of the foam from another video that I watched on YouTube. It's called Hmong Creations. She makes some of the cutest stuff, and she was making a hat for her daughter, so shout out to her because I just love watching her crafts, and she really makes the cutest stuff. So here you see me cutting out the head and the tail portion of the hat. They are 1 inch in width, and I've tried to make them 4 inches, and they just seem to be too long for the proportion of the hat, so I actually cut them to be a little bit shorter at 3 inches. And you'll notice that I really use those nips in the foam to guide me to cut in the correct lengths. So 3 inches in length, 1 inch in width for the head and the tail. So here you see me cutting the final circumference length of the hat, and I'm going to be using 14.5 inches. You can cut it to be a little bit smaller for preemies or even a little bit larger for toddler size heads. So next I use this stencil that I've used in previous hats to create what I call are the empanadas of the hat, and you'll kind of see why I call them that later on in the series. So here I'm cutting out the tops of the hat. This is where the foam will go, and they're not perfect semicircles. They're a little bit more bumpy on the top side of it, kind of like the way a heart is. It's not completely a semicircle, and it's 5.5 inches in length and 1.5 inches in width. So the larger bump actually serves as the front of the hat, and it tapers towards the end. If you're familiar with a traditional Hmong hat, that's the way it looks. So I cut out 2 pieces. And you can see they're not really perfect semicircles. And now I start shaving off the corners, and this serves to make it look more of like a turban, not so much like a boxy circle. And what I do is I just shave off the corner once, and then that then creates 2 corners, and then I shave off those 2 corners, and I just try to round it out as much as I can, and that way it doesn't look too cut out. It still sticks with the shape. There you can see the comparison between the before and after. So here we'll just duplicate the same technique to the other side of the hat, so the second empanada, and you can kind of finagle it around a bit. I had to find out which side I was more comfortable with cutting, and you can see me kind of turning things around to make it more comfortable, but again, just making sure that you try to make it as soft and as rounded as you can without eating too much into the foam. So here we have it. We have our 2 empanadas, and they are imperfect semicircles that are shaved and rounded on the sides with our head and tail piece. Now let's start working on our main piece. So here you want to fold the foam piece in half and then measure out 1.5 inches, and right at the crease you're going to be cutting the foam 1.5 inches into the center. And this will now be the middle of the hat, and this will fall right where your forehead and your eyebrows are. And then measure out 2 inches from that center, make a mark, and then you're going to be connecting the 2. And you'll notice in the traditional Hmong hats that it has a little divot in the front, and it leaves room to hack a peekaboo into the forehead. I'm such a good model, I know. Just kidding. So here you see me using the same technique as I did with the empanadas. You just cut the corner off, and then from that corner, which then creates two smaller corners, you just shave those off. Now, I like to cut off as little as I can because if you do make a mistake, you can't erase it. So I just try to be patient and cut off as little as I can and try to make it as rounded as I can. Now, it's okay to make some mistakes. Sometimes it's not as smooth because you're using the scissor to cut snippets into the foam, but just try your best. The black fabric that we use to cover the foam will hopefully be able to cover up the mistakes. I know I've made some in the past as well, but just try your best. And then I just try to clean it up as much as I can to make it smooth around the edges. And here you go, you can see that it's tapered on the bottom, and then I just go ahead and I just start doing it to the very top. Now this tapered portion is actually on the exterior of the hat, so when you look at a traditional Hmong hat, you notice that it goes thinner on the sides as it's going towards the bottom of the hat. So the shaving of the sides serves that purpose. So I know this project can be a little tedious at times, but with a little patience and a little care, you'll be able to make a really great end product. So we are almost done. You just want to make sure that you cut off any of those loose hanging pieces of foam. Shake all that off, and here's the finished product, tapered on both sides with the divot in the middle of the hat for the headpiece. And I've already cut out the pieces of black fabric, but I wanted to show you the measurements. So the empanada black fabric pieces are 6 by 6. The head and tail pieces are 4 by 6 inches. And then the main piece of fabric is 20 inches by 11 inches. Now, this is where this video finishes, and we'll continue on into the next part of this series, part 3, and we'll go over how the black fabric is sewn onto the foam. So stay tuned, please continue watching, and I will see you next time. Thank you.